Hello, my name is Joey, and today I will be presenting a close reading of the 12th century lay titled Lanval by Marie de France. This poem tells the story of Lanval, a knight who faces rejection from his king despite his best efforts. Lanval ends up traveling to the woods, sad about his rejection, and ends up meeting two beautiful women who lead him to a mysterious fairy-like lady. The lady and Lanval fall in love, and he is gifted with a wealth that is his, but only if he can promise not to discuss their love with anyone else. Lanval returns to the court with his new wealth, but ends up being taken to court after rejecting advances from the king's wife and revealing that he has a lover. Lanval is positive that the fairy lady will not appear because he broke their promise, but the lady arrives on a horseback to save Lanval. They both ride off on the horse, and they are never to be seen again. From this poem, there is a theme that is prevalent that can be dissected within the text. Lanval's experiences create a stark contrast between the relationship he has with the king versus the relationship he has with the fairy lady. A question we can ask about this poem is, how does aristocracy and status affect the relationships within the story? What is the difference between courtly love and mystical love? We can see from the very start of the poem that Lanval is feeling sad because he's being rejected by his king. In some of the first few lines of the story, it is stated that, quote, "That was Lanval. Arthur, the king, forgot him, and none of his men favored him either. For his valor, for his generosity, his beauty, and his bravery, most men envied him. Some feigned the appearance of love, who, if something unpleasant happened to him, would have not been at all disturbed." Lanval's sadness could justly derive from the author stating that the king had forgotten him and that none of his men favored him either. When we see the word favored, it further pushes a narrative for Lanval that revolves around competitiveness. This word also ostracizes Lanval from the group of men, almost making it seem as though his generosity is what keeps him divided from the rest of the court. When it is stated that the king has, quote, "forgotten him," it is a harsh statement that seems deliberate. Why has the king forgotten Lanval? Is this deliberate? If the king has forgotten Lanval, it does make sense that the other men would not find value in him either. This short excerpt from the beginning of the poem already elaborates on social hierarchy, and perhaps because the king has disregarded Lanval, his other men have just followed suit. During this time, approval from a king would have meant many things for your personal life. According to an article from Britannica, in exchange for their services as a warrior, knights were given land and other materials such as money or horses as a reward for their work. A reward like this reflects your loyalty to the kingdom. Immediately, we can see that jealousy is an emotion that revolves around royalty. The other knights hated Lanval's generosity when it is stated that, quote, "For his valor, for his generosity, his beauty and his bravery, most men envied him, and some feigned the appearance of love, who if something unpleasant happened to him, would not have been at all disturbed." The word feign pushes a social aspect of royal society, which is derived from inauthenticity. Some men around Lanval pretend to enjoy him, only to be secretly wishing something bad would happen. This exemplifies performative behavior in the court, which makes being a knight more than just about protecting the people. The jealousy from the men is interesting because technically, the king has not given Lanval anything to be jealous of. Receiving land and recognition from your king would be a great pride for a knight, but Lanval does not have any of that. Instead, it seems that the court is jealous of what Lanval holds within. This suggests that perhaps the other knights yearn for Lanval's generosity, but have instead chosen a life of materialism to make it easier for them to stay in court. We can see from this excerpt of text from Marie de France that she sees royalty as a competitive feat. The king encourages toxicity among his subjects, which breeds an environment that welcomes hollowness and inauthenticity. Later in the poem, we see a line from the mysterious fairy lady that shows how Lanval is treated by mysticism. She states, Lanval, sweet love, because of you I have come from my land. I came to seek you from far away. If you are brave and courtly, no emperor or count or king will ever have known such joy or good, for I love you more than anything. In this excerpt, there is a clear difference between the way Lanval is treated by his court and the way that he is treated by the fairy lady. In these lines, the fairy lady states that Lanval will be treated better than any emperor, count, or king because her love will provide him with everything he could want. The fairy lady describes Lanval as being better than even the most powerful men, but this does not mean that he will gain any disciples or followers. Instead, the fairy lady emphasizes the joy and good Lanval will feel. This shows that the fairy lady is referring to a joy that derives from emotional maturity. While the court offers materialistic pride, the fairy lady offers Lanval a reward that cannot be seen. The fairy lady also states before this that she had come to seek Lanval from far away. The fairy lady sought out Lanval, specifically using what seems to be magical powers. What parts of Lanval did the fairy lady desire, and why use her magical powers to seek out Lanval? It seems as though the reasoning is because she desired his kind heart. Marie de France uses the fairy lady's character to state that Lanval's generosity wasn't a common trait found within the people of the court. Lanval's altruism continued even after being forgotten by his king, showing that his character does not change when denied a reward. Lanval is personally sought out to receive a reward, making him more inclined to accept the life of magic versus staying within the court. The fairy lady also states that Lanval must remain brave and courtly to receive her love. This encourages Lanval to still uphold his values as a knight, and the reward will be much greater than what he could have ever received from royalty. However, you can see from this text that the love from the fairy lady remains transactional. Even with the endearing rules, are relationships for Lanval always going to require these conditions? The deal that the fairy lady makes with Lanval is meant to never be broken, adding a level of confinement to the relationship. This could possibly mean that even in the magical world, love is still conditional in nature. Lanval never truly escapes a reward system for his hard work, which could be a commentary on Marie de France's behalf. Even if love still has conditions, the goals of the emotion have changed for the better. Lanval's bravery no longer leads to social gain, but instead results in emotional fulfillment. In conclusion, this poem is important because it is a commentary on the fact that the fairy lady's love is the most beneficial for Lanval. Marie de France's poem is meant to shed light on the differences between materialistic and emotional value, and what happens when you accept the latter. This poem promotes breaking away from a place system and challenging the majority by gaining individuality. Lanval is truly free once he lets go of societal expectations and social pressures. That is my close reading of some of the excerpts of Lanval by Marie de France. I hope you guys were able to take away some messages from this poem.